My name is Evelyn Hart, and I used to believe kindness could hold a family together. For most of my life, that belief was all I had. When my husband, Thomas, passed away 12 years ago, the house he left behind felt like both a memory and a promise, a place where love had been built brick by brick. I thought I would grow old there, surrounded by my son's laughter and the smell of the garden he used to help his father tend. But people change faster than seasons, or maybe they just reveal who they were all along. When my son, Aaron, married Lila, I welcomed her like the daughter I never had. I gave her the master bedroom because she said the morning light helped her migraines. I let her pick the paint for the living room because modern colors make a home feel alive. And when she started calling me Evie instead of Mom, I told myself it sounded affectionate, even when it didn't. The first few months after their wedding were gentle. We cooked together, laughed about old stories, shared tea on the porch. But slowly, like dust settling after a storm, the small things began to change. My framed photos disappeared from the shelves. My favorite chair was moved to the garage to make more space. She started ordering groceries herself, signing every delivery receipt like she was the homeowner. By the first Christmas after their marriage, the shift was complete. Lila planned everything, menus, guest lists, decorations, while I followed quietly behind her, wiping counters, stirring sauces, keeping out of the way. She gave orders with a smile, the kind of smile that carried the softest cruelty. Aaron likes his napkins folded this way, Evie. Could you please iron the tablecloth again? The wrinkles show on camera. It stung, not because of the chores, but because of how naturally she assumed I would do them. As if this house, my husband's house, had turned into her stage, and I was the backstage help keeping her performance spotless. I remember one night, sitting alone at the kitchen table after everyone had gone to bed. The lights were off, except for the small lamp above the sink. The silence felt heavy, like the house itself had forgotten my name. My reflection in the window looked tired, not from work, but from being unseen. That was the night I realized I wasn't living with them anymore. They were living off me. Still, I stayed quiet. I told myself Aaron would notice eventually, that love would tug him back toward fairness. But love makes people blind, and blindness makes cruelty easy. The years rolled forward. Lila's confidence grew like ivy, crawling over everything once mine. She hosted dinners for her friends, showing them her beautiful home, the heritage furniture she was restoring. I would stand in the kitchen, washing dishes while they toasted to her taste. Every toast sounded like an erasure. Then came the small humiliations that cut deeper because they were public. She began introducing me as Aaron's mom who stays with us, not as the woman who owned the house they stood in. When I tried to correct her once, Aaron laughed and said, "Oh, Mom, don't be so formal." Formal. That word became my cage. I didn't recognize my life anymore. My mornings were spent cleaning, my afternoons cooking, my evenings pretending gratitude. They had made me invisible in my own home, and I had helped them do it by staying gentle, by choosing peace over confrontation. But peace bought with silence always costs too much. It was last November when the final straw arrived. Lila was hosting her winter lights party, some sort of pre-Christmas event for her influencer friends. The house was glittering, crowded with strangers who treated me like staff. One of them handed me his empty glass and said, "Thanks, ma'am," without looking at my face. I smiled, took the glass, and walked into the kitchen. Something in me shifted that night. A quiet, definite click. I realized they would never see me again as family because I had let them forget that I existed before them, and I decided to remind them. The morning after that party, I woke before dawn. The house smelled of stale perfume and burnt candles, the kind of scent that clings to excess. I walked through each room, collecting empty glasses, straightening chairs, picking up the pieces they would never notice. By the time the sun rose, the house was spotless again, and my decision was clean with it. I had no plan yet, only a pulse of certainty. I would stop waiting to be remembered. I sat at the kitchen table, opened my old notebook, and started listing what was mine. The deed to the house, the savings account Thomas and I had built, the jewelry he had gifted me through the years, even the small patch of garden that still bloomed no matter how many of Lila's redesigns had trampled it. All of it was still mine, not because of paper or law, but because of time. That list became my quiet beginning. Over the next few weeks, I began sorting through old files. I found the original property documents tucked in a folder marked "Mortgage Closed," my name alone on every page. I smiled for the first time in months. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't need to. Silence was finally working for me. December came early that year, and so did Lila's ambitions. She started talking about hosting the Christmas of the decade. She wanted a professional photographer, a branded decor sponsor, even a drone shot of the house for her social feed. I watched her fuss over ribbon shades and centerpiece themes as if the world depended on her taste. When she announced it at dinner, Aaron clapped. "That's amazing, babe. Mom, you'll help with the cooking, right?" I looked up from my plate and said, very evenly, "We'll see." He didn't notice the pause between the words. Lila did. Her eyes flickered. That night, in my room, the one she now called the guest suite, I pulled out an old photo of Thomas holding baby Aaron under the first Christmas tree we planted here. I traced their faces and whispered, "I think it's time I take us home again." From then on, my days changed. I stopped offering help. When Lila asked for my opinion, I said, "Whatever you think is best." When Aaron left his laundry in the hall, I stepped over it. They began to frown more often, sensing a shift they couldn't name. I opened a new bank account and transferred part of my savings. I reached out to an old friend, Grace, who still worked at the bank downtown. She helped me quietly reissue all the property papers to ensure everything was secure. "Getting ready for something?" she asked. I just smiled and said, "A little late spring cleaning." Each quiet move felt like breath returning. Lila spent every afternoon rehearsing perfection for her guests, oblivious. She spoke to brands, arranged sponsored deliveries, even hired caterers. She never realized I was withdrawing, piece by piece, not just from the chores, but from their control. A week before Christmas, she came to me in the kitchen, holding a list. "Evie, we'll need extra help on the 24th. Could you handle the table set up before the photographers arrive?" I was washing cups. The water ran warm over my hands. "I'm afraid I won't be here," I said. She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I've decided to take a little trip this year. Somewhere quiet." She laughed, thinking it was a joke. "But it's Christmas." "Exactly." I left the sink running and walked out before she could answer. It felt good, that first act of refusal. A small rebellion, but enough to shake the air around us. Over the next few days, she tried to charm me back. "Evie, you'll miss the fun." "Evie, Aaron wants you here." But Aaron never asked himself. He just nodded when she spoke, as if my presence was automatic. By Christmas Eve morning, they were too busy to notice me packing. I folded only what mattered: a few clothes, my mother's pearls, and Thomas's watch. The rest I left behind, like old versions of myself. Before I closed the suitcase, I took one last walk through the house. The garlands glittered, the trees shimmered under perfect lighting. It looked beautiful, sterile, staged. Not a home anymore, but a set. I left a note on the kitchen counter. It was short. "Gone visiting. Merry Christmas. Evelyn." When I stepped outside, the air smelled of frost and freedom. My taxi waited at the gate. As we pulled away, I looked back once and whispered, "Now let's see how perfect their Christmas really is." I didn't know then that by the time I returned, everything they'd built on my silence would already be collapsing. The city looked different through the taxi window that morning, brighter, almost kind. I hadn't seen it without a rush of guilt in years. As the house disappeared behind me, I felt something like youth returning. I checked into a small lakeside hotel an hour away, the kind of place that smelled like pine wood and clean air. The receptionist asked, "Just you, ma'am?" And for the first time in so long, the words didn't sting. "Yes," I said. "Just me." The room overlooked frozen water, sunlight scattered across it like glass. I unpacked slowly, folded my few clothes into the drawer, and placed Thomas's watch on the bedside table. It ticked softly, steady, as if reminding me I was right on time. I ordered tea, sat by the window, and opened my phone. The notifications from Lila's social media came in like clockwork, setting up for the most magical Christmas ever. "Our home is glowing tonight. Family means everything." Each caption was a performance, each photo a mask. I smiled, sipping my tea. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just watching a story unfold that I no longer had to play a part in. Still, I had no interest in cruelty. My plan wasn't to destroy them. It was to let truth do its own work. And truth, when it arrives, doesn't knock softly. That afternoon, I emailed a few people I hadn't spoken to in years. Aaron's uncle Robert, his godmother Lydia, and Thomas's business partner Malcolm. They were family once, before Lila's pride made them unwelcome. They remembered the house before it was a set. I told them simply that I wouldn't be home for Christmas, and that if they wanted to visit, the doors were still open. I left it at that. By evening, snow began to fall in soft flakes. I called Grace again from the bank, confirming the paperwork had gone through. The house was legally, officially, and publicly under my name alone. Grace laughed. "About time, Evelyn." "Yes," I said. About time. I spent Christmas Eve reading by the fire. The phone buzzed twice, once from Aaron, once from Lila. I didn't answer either. I wanted them to see what life looked like when I wasn't the invisible thread holding it all together. When I finally did check my phone, there were messages stacked like fallen dominoes. Lila's voice messages first. Cheerful, then anxious, then clipped. "Evie, where are the table runners?" "Evie, the oven's not working right. Can you call the repair guy?" "Evie, are you coming back soon?" Then Aaron's. "Mom, Lila's a bit stressed. Could you please just come home? We've got guests arriving in an hour." 2 hours later. "Mom, what did you mean by gone visiting? Where did you go?" And finally, "Mom, what's going on here? Did you tell Uncle Robert to come? He's here with half the family." I laughed out loud. A real, unfiltered laugh that felt like oxygen. It was almost poetic. The people they'd excluded had arrived expecting me, not her. I could imagine it clearly. Robert's booming voice demanding to see me, Lydia asking where I was, Lila's smile cracking under the weight of expectation. I didn't need to be there. The truth was doing its job. By midnight, the calls stopped. I imagined the scene, guests murmuring, confusion growing, the picture-perfect table untouched. The woman who wanted a Christmas for the cameras had ended up hosting the one moment she couldn't stage. Real embarrassment. I slept better that night than I had in years. The next morning, I went for a walk by the frozen lake. The air was sharp, clean, honest. A group of children were building a snowman near the path, their laughter echoing across the ice. For a moment, I thought of Aaron as a boy, how he used to beg me to build forts and snowmen with him. My heart softened. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about remembering myself. When I got back to the hotel, there was one final voicemail from Aaron. His voice was quieter this time. "Mom, I think I understand now. We messed up. Lila's upset, but she'll live. Come home when you can, please." I didn't delete it. I didn't return it either. Some lessons need time to sink in. That afternoon, I wrote in my notebook again, like I had weeks before. I wrote one sentence. "Sometimes love means leaving before they break what's left of you." Then I closed the book, packed my bag, and decided to stay another week. The house could wait. It was time they learned how heavy silence really feels when it's not doing the cleaning, cooking, or forgiving. I come back a week later, not because they ask again, but because I want to see what silence has built in my absence. The drive feels lighter. The streets glitter with the leftovers of the season. Stray tinsel in gutters, cold air full of smoke and sugar. My suitcase sits beside me like an accomplice that knows when to keep a secret. When the car turns into our street, I almost don't recognize the house. The perfect garlands have gone dull, the wreath tilts sideways. There are muddy footprints across the front steps, and someone's forgotten to take out the trash. I stand for a long moment before unlocking the door. The smell hits first, spoiled food, burnt wax, a faint trace of panic. The living room looks like a photograph left out in the rain. The expensive tree has shed half its glitter. Gift boxes are scattered, some still wrapped, some half torn open. There's an energy here that only chaos leaves behind. Lila appears at the top of the stairs. Her hair is unbrushed, her voice brittle. "Evie, you're back." I set my bag down. "I am." She hesitates, then tries to smile. "We didn't know what to do without you." I don't answer. I walk past her into the kitchen. The counter is covered in dishes. The oven door hangs slightly open. A wine glass lies shattered on the floor, a stain of red seeping into the grout. For a second, I almost feel sorry for her. Then I remember how easily she once handed me her own glass without looking at my face. Aaron comes in from the patio. His shirt is untucked, his expression tight. "Mom," he says softly, "it all went wrong. The food burned, the guests left early, and Uncle Robert, he told everyone you owned the house." "I didn't even realize," I interrupt gently. "You didn't realize a lot of things, Aaron." He flinches but doesn't argue. There's nothing left to defend. I move through each room slowly, seeing it all for what it is now. A monument built on borrowed grace. And for the first time, I feel no anger, just clarity. The silence that once suffocated me now feels like armor. That evening, I sit on the porch with tea. The snow has melted into soft gray slush. The air smells of pine and smoke. Lila stays inside, probably crying in a room she once called hers. Aaron paces by the window, lost. They're quiet now, not because they've learned manners, but because guilt has its own language. The next morning, I make breakfast for myself. Just toast and jam, the way Thomas used to like it. Aaron joins me cautious. "I'm sorry," he says. "For everything." I nod. "Apologies are good. Change is better." He nods, eyes wet, and for a brief second, I see my boy again. The one who used to pick wildflowers for me, not the man who forgot who paid for his roof. It's enough. I don't need more. Later that week, I call a lawyer. Not for a fight, just for order. We update the house deed, ensuring Aaron and Lila understand what that signature means. When the papers are signed, Lila's hand trembles. "You're taking everything," she whispers. "No," I say. "I'm taking back what was always mine." The day the documents are filed, I host a small gathering, just family. Not for revenge, but for restoration. Robert comes, Lydia too. They bring laughter, warmth, memories. The house feels alive again. Lila tries to smile through it, serving drinks, quieter than I've ever seen her. When someone compliments the house, she gestures toward me. "It's Evelyn's," she says softly. Finally, a truth spoken aloud. When everyone leaves, I stand alone in the hallway. The lights shimmer off the glass frames where my photos now hang again. It's the same house, but it breathes differently. The air feels lighter, honest. I realize that revenge isn't always thunder. Sometimes it's just the sound of your own footsteps returning home without fear. That night, I pour a glass of wine, sit by the fire, and text Aaron 3 words. "I'm proud again." He replies almost instantly, "Me too, Mom." I smile. The house, my name, my peace, all back where they belong. It has been 6 months since that winter, and the house no longer feels like a battlefield. Every morning I open the windows and let the air rush through the rooms, sweeping away the last traces of that old tension. The curtains breathe with me. The walls no longer echo footsteps that weren't mine. Aaron and Lila moved out in February. It was quiet at first. Boxes, muffled voices, the creak of the front door one final time. I helped them pack what was theirs, carefully, kindly. When they left, I stood on the porch and waved. Not out of habit, but out of peace. They needed space to learn who they were without the house holding them up. The following weeks were a strange kind of joy. I discovered the pleasure of my own company again. I painted the kitchen pale yellow, planted herbs outside the window, replaced the broken swing in the garden. At night, I'd sit under the porch light with a book, listening to the crickets. No voices demanding, no footsteps behind me. just stillness that belonged to me. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. People began to stop by again. Old friends who'd been politely kept away during Lila's reign returned with flowers and laughter. One afternoon, Grace from the bank came over with muffins and said, "Evelyn, you look 10 years younger." I laughed because I felt it. Freedom is its own kind of facelift. I didn't need to gloat, but life has a way of writing its own poetry. A local magazine reached out after hearing about the house's revival. They wanted to feature it as an example of classic architecture restored with care. I agreed, mostly for Thomas. When the article came out, the photos gleamed, the garden, the old piano, my smile beside the fireplace. The caption read, "Evelyn Hart, keeping heritage alive." I didn't think much of it until a week later, when Aaron called. His voice was gentler than I remembered. "Mom, we saw the article. It was beautiful. Lila showed it to everyone. She said you made the place look like home again." That was the first time she had ever used the word home and meant me in the same sentence. After the call, I sat by the window and looked out at the twilight. I realized there was nothing left to fix. The story had turned itself right side up. Now I host small dinners once a month, just a few neighbors, sometimes Aaron and Lila if they want to join. When they arrive, they bring flowers, take their shoes off at the door, and call me Mom with warmth, not obligation. We laugh, eat too much dessert, and when they leave, I hug them without resentment. Sometimes, when I walk through the hallway at night, I catch my reflection in the glass of a framed photo. I see the woman who once wiped those same floors feeling invisible. She looks back at me and smiles. We both know what we had to lose to find ourselves, and yes, there are moments when I still think about that first Christmas, the one that collapsed in glitter and silence. But now, the memory makes me laugh softly, not with bitterness, just amusement, because in the end, everything that needed to crumble did, and everything worth keeping remained. I light a candle on the mantel for Thomas every evening. The flame dances, steady and bright. I tell him quietly, "You'd like it now. It's peaceful again." Then I pour myself a cup of tea, sit on the porch, and watch the garden lights flicker on. The world feels wide, forgiving, and mine. The best revenge, I've learned, isn't making others small. It's becoming so content that their old shadows can't reach you. I smile to myself as the night settles around the house. They once called me the maid here. Now they call me the woman who rebuilt it, and I think that's a better title anyway. Sometimes revenge doesn't roar. It doesn't destroy or shout or burn. It simply lives well. It stands tall in the same place where it was once made small. I didn't ruin anyone. I didn't even raise my voice. I just remembered who I was. And the world followed. They once treated me like a maid in my own house. And now, every time they walk through that door, they remember whose name is on the deed. And whose peace they can never borrow again. Because in the end, the sweetest revenge isn't payback. It's freedom, earned quietly, lived loudly.